It is great to have you back with us. And the Wild and Scenic Film Festival, it's actually the largest festival of its kind in the United States. It's where thousands of activists and filmmakers and special guests come together, and we explore stories and solutions. And really, it's about everyday people who are making a difference in their lives and sharing that with others. It's such an honor to have back here Toby McCleod and his fantastic colleagues who are featured in his films. How many films are there, Toby?
4 films.
4 films, standing on sacred ground, going everywhere from Australia, Hawaii, Peru, even in the Northwest, and beautiful films that incorporate really spiritual, sacred activism. Many of the stories, I had no idea any of these issues or controversies were even going on in these cultures, and that's what you've done, Toby, is shed some light. So I want to welcome Toby McCleod. I have Caleen Sisk, her sister Helene Sisk, and Luana Busby Neff, and Craig Neff, who made it so much more easier than Luana, from Hawaii. So first, welcome everybody to the film festival again. Yeah, Caleen, you were here last year.
Yes.
And Luana and Craig, is this your first time? Yes. And Helene, were you here last year with?
No.
So it's the first time for you too. Toby, I want to just jump into this and talk about, you're showcasing something in the film festival that we don't often see, and that is what is going in specific Indigenous cultures, being challenged sometimes by these really hard, difficult, challenging situations, often with corporation greed, whether that's mining or taking away the traditional stories and the cultures and the heritage that has been passed for thousands of years, and then all of a sudden it's like, bam, wiped out, right? Trying to wipe that out within several centuries, decades. So what is it that inspired you, first of all, to do these in-depth stories with folks like Caleen and Luana?
Well, years ago I made a film in the Hopi area about coal strip mining and uranium mining, and while I was interested as an environmental sort of Western white guy in the science and the impacts of coal strip mining and uranium mining, the radiation, what the Hopi spoke about from really the depths of their cultural and spiritual, core was the sacredness of the land and specific places around the landscape, mountains, springs, as the source of life and sacred for so many centuries that was what was hurting them as much as the physical damage. And they said to me, until your people understand that the environmental crisis is a spiritual crisis, a disconnect from the natural world, we're going to continue. You can stop the pollution, but without that connection, we're not going to survive this time. And so that set me on a path of listening to Indigenous people talk about the importance of sacred places and their cultural responsibility to take care of these places. And when language is destroyed in Russia or America or Hawaii, a different nation, the knowledge, the ecological knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, the subtlety of the meaning of connection goes away. So bringing back those languages and ceremonies has been something that's been going on now for 30 or 40 years. And protection of sacred places is a really important part of that movement.
Well, and also too, because in your culture, in your traditions, the stories are all connected to your natural environment. And so if we don't understand that part, right, it's like sharing statistics with someone isn't as powerful as actually sharing the story and the connection that connects with all of us, right? The reason why we need to care about this is what's going to motivate anyone to be passionate about that and want to take care of it. So how did you, like Caleen and Helene and Luana and Craig, how did you take Craig, this white guy, in the first place? I mean, and you had to really it's in-depth stories, first of all. So being there and hanging out, like, how did you first take that in and trust him to say, like, yes, we will share these stories that have been really more between your own heritage, your own family and ancestors?
Yeah.
Caleen, you're a chief of your, what is it, the how do you pronounce? Winnemem. Okay.
Yeah. Before I was chief, Florence Jones, my great-granny, she was chief. And on down, I'm the 5th in line of people who have led the tribe. And she actually opened the door for Toby through another friend of ours, Claire Cummings, who was our attorney to defend Mount Shasta from the ski resort. And so that door opened, and all of us went into panic.
Yeah.
And we
And
wanted
then
to
here
kick
comes
him
Toby.
out.
Here comes Toby. Yeah.
The cameras.
Yeah, with the cameras, and then there was a lot of distrust because of cameras before had twisted our story and made us look like, you know, we were like silly or stupid or, you know, wanting too much. And so a lot of the tribe was concerned, but Grams said we have to tell the world. And so that was the beginning, you know, even though there was a lot of resistance and a lot of invasion of our privacy and our sacredness was now exposed and put out to the world.
And Luana, what did Toby have to do to gain your trust? You know, so and afterwards we're going to get into a little bit of the stories too behind this and some.
No, well, actually, it's all about relationships and who Toby knew that really allowed him through that portal with Kaho'olawe. And he has been a mutual friend of a good friend of mine, which was Winona LaDuke, and we've been hanging out in the same circles for over 30 years, working on land issues with Native American and Hawaiian. And Toby's been around just as long too. And in that, we were able to interconnect the different things that we were doing, different conferences that we kind of gathered around beyond sustainability, creating communities of leadership on a platform of reverence. And ta-da, it was, and then Toby asking permission to do the work that he'd done. And he lent us a vision of what he's done in the past with In the Light of Reverence. And then it's just like, how do you lend voice to the land? You with a guy who has deep integrity and deep aloha for Native Indigenous people, and it would just all fit in. You know, so.
Well, and Toby, you've done an incredible job in these films, and I highly encourage everyone to see all of them. So, I mean, it's, and the work that you're doing just by showcasing these stories, it really is connected to all of us in one way, wherever you are. Like here, we're in Nevada City, and we have the Yuba River, and facing them reopening mines, for example. Luana and Craig, can you tell us a little bit about the island that I had no idea existed in Hawaii, and just real briefly, what you're doing there now to restore it?
The island of Kaho'olawe, which is in the archipelago of Hawaiian Islands, started off as a very sacred island to Kanaloa, and then right after the war, well, it went into ranching, and it was another island there, but eventually, after the start of World War II, the U.S. government took it over and turned it into a bombing range in 1941. So it was bombed for 50 years. Not only every type of military ordinance from the U.S. government, but also throughout the Pacific Rim, Japan, Aotearoa, Guam, Canada. They all came there for a rim pack exercise to bomb this island. And you know, the fear in a lot of people when it started was they were going to attack Japan. Japan was going to attack Hawaii. So the fear was there to help the United States to protect Hawaii. You know, it's similar to what government is still doing now with Homeland Security and, you know, other strategies. And then there's a movement in Hawaii through a lot of Hawaiians in the early 70s that said, you know, why can't we go to this island? It is a sacred island. Our kupuna is from there. And the only way to stop or have an impact was to occupy the island. So that was the start of that. And through many years of spiritual ceremony, through political movements, through organization, educating the community, it finally came true to where they did stop the bombing. And now we're trying to heal the island from that devastation, clean it, and use it for what it was really intended for its sacredness of that island, to help Hawaiians not only gain the land, but gain their dignity back, which is, as we heal the island heals us.
It's a beautiful, I mean, it's a beautiful story to see how the Hawaiians have gone to restore this island, and doing so actually because there's no commercialization that is allowed on this, so doing that without funding. So I also am curious, you know, coming here to the Wild and Scenic Film Fest, sharing these stories, it creates ripples. And we never know who it's going to affect, enhance, or change the lives of someone. So I'm wondering if briefly, like, you could share a story of someone that you know who's heard about this story now, Toby, right? Through standing on sacred ground, and how it's impacted or enhanced their lives or just changed the way that they're living their life now.
Well, last summer, this is not an American story.
It doesn't need to be an American
because
story.
this is 8 stories all around the world,
Yeah.
and one of the purposes is to connect these land rights and spiritual struggles. So Caleen came with me last summer to the Altai Republic in Siberia, where we premiered the film that she is in and the Altaians are in. And we did it at a fire ceremony where there were 25 shamans from all over Asia. And so that was our first audience, and I was a little worried. But afterwards, the comments, the main one that answers your question is these folks who are very local and yet cosmic in their experience, really, they said that what they got from the film was that they're not alone, that they have a common struggle, that the history is so similar of a government banning language and killing the shamans and outlawing the spiritual practice, and yet it comes back regardless of all this repression. Now the Winnemem are fighting the raising of Shasta Dam, flooding more of their homeland. The Altaians are fighting a gas pipeline through a sacred burial area. And by linking these struggles, there's strength.
United.
Yeah. And they can support each other from a distance, and you could really feel that as Caleen did a ceremony there at that in Altai and went up to the mountains and gathered some water to bring back to Mount Shasta. The most powerful thing that I remember was them saying, "We are not alone. If we're united, we will not be defeated." And that really moved me.
I know we just have about 2 minutes, but Caleen, you're nodding your head. Are you glad that your granny opened the door for this, to share this story?
To some degree, but
Okay.
we would much rather have been able to live our life, you know, in a way that we're
Sure.
supposed to, and not have to fight and not
Yes.
have to do these
Sure.
things. But it is the water, the impact of the water, and we did bring water back from the Altai, and our spring is dry right now. And for us, the water is very important because it is the basis of our purity ceremony, that we believe that we are mostly water, we are born in water, and when our girls become women, they swim back across the water. And so this coming from, you know, the different places around the world where they're talking about this water, maybe we can change
Connects
this.
everyone. In 1 minute, could you shout out what empowers me is? What empowers me is?
Ceremony.
What empowers me is?
Water.
Water. Helene, I know you didn't want to talk, but
Our ceremonies.
our ceremonies. Luana. Craig.
And for me also is the land base.
Craig and Luana and Helene and Caleen and Toby, we could talk for hours, and I just want to thank all of you for returning or coming here for the first time to the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Such an honor to have you here with us to share your stories. And Toby, thank you for creating a platform for these to be heard and for connecting all of us.
Thanks for having us
Yeah,
here.
thank you. I'm Elisa Parker, Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be right back.